What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, it's prime time, baby, as we are going to be discussing everything Transformers Age of the Primes, which will be the next big thing after Transformers Legacy United, as well as all of the reveals that took place as part of this year's China Cybertron Con. But firstly, let's start by flying through some of the non-transforming figures by starting off with Threezero. So first up, they displayed in total 3 brand new prototypes, the first being DLX Jazz and the second being Ironhide, both inspired by the OG 2007 live action film and both looking fantastic. But that's not all, because they also hinted that they will be concluding that original 2007 crew by dropping 2 additional teasers. The first I'm thinking is definitely that original Bumblebee, and the second is most definitely Ratchet. And guys, that is going to create for a killer display, especially stacked up against the Revenge of the Fallen Optimus Prime. But I mentioned 3 prototypes, so the third and the final one would be actually from their MDLX line, which is usually much smaller and slightly more affordable in comparison to some of their larger figures, and this would be a G1 inspired Shockwave. Now personally, I have loved what they've done so far when it comes down to this line. It's pretty much where they take some of those original G1 character designs and just put their own unique twist on them. They usually are still super easily recognizable, but are incredibly detailed front side to back, and this Shockwave is no exception. And what an amazing, very logical choice as the next Decepticon, as this guy's gonna look killer stacked up against both Megatron and Starscream. Then next up is Yolopark, which if any of these reveals are anything to go by, I'm thinking may just become a little sneaky, because it does appear as if though they are phasing out their regular $30 AMK products in favour of the slightly more expensive $50 AMK Pro releases. So first up, they finally dropped official product images of their Rise of the Beast Mirage. Now guys, pre-orders are currently open, so for those of you who do plan on picking that bad boy up, then make sure to check out the link in the description box below. Now there is no denying that this guy looks fantastic. Honestly, I thought Mirage was easily one of the best characters to come from that Transformers movie, although unfortunately the design is incredibly difficult to translate into a transforming toy, which is why right now I do think this is easily the best action figure based on his design. In addition to sporting inbuilt LEDs, he will also come packing with the 2 inbuilt arm cannons, which we do see this guy deploy during that amazing museum battle. Although, as we do check out their second reveal, this is where I do begin to think that maybe they are becoming a little crafty, because this will be a Rise of the Beasts Optimus Prime. Now you guys may be asking, haven't we already seen that from Yolopark? And you would be absolutely correct. So this does appear to be a redo of their regular AMK release, this time with better paint apps, more accessories, and even articulated hands. And I'm really curious to know that for those of you who did pick up the original version, then judging by these images, do you guys also plan in double dipping on this mold? Because I'm going to be completely real with you guys, for someone who picked up Rhinox to solely give that Optimus Prime some weapons, right now I really think this is super crafty, which is a shame to say as the rest of their reveals look fantastic. So next up, there will be an IDW inspired version of Tarn, which does look to be an absolute beast. He's going to be much bulkier in comparison to the Legacy Evolution version, and definitely a lot more comics accurate, and will no doubt be a great, cheaper alternative in comparison to the Flame Toys version. Next up, there will then be a Revenge of the Fallen Megatron, and lately it really does seem as if though Yolopark are massively stepping things up when it comes down to the Bayverse. This guy again is highly detailed, and much like Tarn, also appears to be a pretty decent cheaper alternative in comparison to Threezero's DLX version. As far as the next reveal goes, this will be an Age of Extinction Drift. I think it's great to see them approach some of the later Michael Bay designs, as I don't really think they translated all that well into transforming figures. Drift is a prime example of that, had a very complex design in the movie, and unfortunately the original deluxe class I really don't think quite cut it. So this looks fantastic. There will then be a Rise of the Beasts RC, which much like Mirage, I think is looking to be the best action figure based on her design yet. There will also be a Transformers 1 Optimus Prime and Megatron, both based on their final forms. Now we did get a pretty decent look at these guys a few months back, but this appears to be a slightly slightly better, way more detailed prototype, and these right now are looking super promising. And if you guys loved the Bumblebee movie as much as Hasbro did, I mean, just check out how many Studio Series figures they dropped, then you guys are going to be a massive fan of what Yolopark have in store for you. As in addition to their Cybertronian B127, they have plans to release Starscream, Soundwave, and Shockwave. And again, despite only being prototypes, these appear to be super detailed. Then rounding things up completely for Yolopark, their final reveal would be a G1 Bumblebee, which is specifically designed to pair alongside the AMK Pro G1 Optimus Prime. Now, considering these figures usually tend to retail for roughly $50, I am left wondering exactly what this Bumblebee will include in order to truly justify that price point, or will this be a case where this will be the first AMK Pro product not to retail for that price tag? I guess only time will tell. Changing gears now over to some actual transforming Transformers, we are kickstarting things off big, as Hasbro recently dropped the reveal for a pretty awesome crossover that would be the Transformers and Sonic the Hedgehog mashup. Now, considering that Sonic 3 is just around the corner, this really couldn't drop at a better time. The hype is absolutely real. So this will be a twin pack consisting of Blue Booster and Wing Tao. Now, as I'm sure you guys would expect, Blue Booster is of course supposed to be Sonic. Now, when it comes down to his robot mode, to be entirely honest, right now I don't think this looks as good as it could have. There's just something off about the head sculpt. I really think it's got to do with the fact that this guy is massively lacking pupils, and it is such a shame to see him not sporting the iconic red and white sneakers, which is mainly due to this guy being a Transformer. He will transform into a blue racing car, which is very similar to what has appeared in most of the Sonic games, and it does actually look quite solid. It almost has a Cybertronian quality to it, but it is a shame that when it comes down to that robot mode, ultimately I do feel as if though they've kind of dropped the ball, which is something that cannot be said as we check out Wing Tao, aka Taos, because to my surprise, I really do think this is the better out of the two. The robot mode looks solid, and I do believe, with the exception of the Revenge of the Fallen Ransack, this is one of the first ever biplanes that we are seeing from Hasbro, and this looks to be flawless. This is such a fantastic alternate mode, and one that I really wouldn't mind seeing popping up when it does come down to the main line. So what do you guys think of this Transformers and Sonic crossover? Like myself, do you guys think that perhaps this could be slightly better, or are you more than happy with what they've put out? Sound off below and let me know. Now we turn to my personal bread and butter, that of course being Transformers Studio Series, and the first reveal would be a part of their brand new Level A assortment. This will be a Devastation Optimus Prime, which honestly guys, I think looks kinda meh. It's like they're trying to create a budget-friendly alternative to the SS86 Optimus Prime, but I really can't say this looks particularly good, nor do I really see the point, especially with the slew of G1 Primes that we've seen over the past year. Even the cell shading, which is arguably one of the most iconic traits carried over from the game, in comparison to that 30th anniversary Transformers Siege Optimus Prime, seems to be a pretty big step back. Still, I guess it's cool to have Transformers Devastation finally become a part of the Gamer Edition, and it will be interesting to see a few of the upcoming releases. I do believe that next year we are expected to see a Sideswipe and Deluxe Wheeljack 2-pack, as well as a Voyager Elite Seeker and a Deluxe Ground Soldier. Then the second Studio Series figure that we have to discuss is one that was recently teased to us through the Space Bridge. This would be a War for Cybertron Voyager class Ironhide, which is based off the Gamer Edition Ratchet mold, which for those of you who have checked out my review, you guys will know I regard as being one of the best from that subline. And this guy won't just be your straight up repaint with a new head sculpt, much like we did see from the 86 version. Instead, in addition to a new head, he will come packing with brand new shoulders, a chest, as well as some new accessories. And whilst the vehicle mode does appear to be pretty much just a direct repaint, it still looks to be an absolute unit. So definitely I'm very excited to pick up Ironhide. He looks to be even better in comparison to Ratchet. And I'd also love to get your guys' thoughts down below on what you think of the brand new packaging. Do you guys prefer the look of the original Studio Series box art, or are you kind of digging what they're doing this time round? To be honest, I'm kind of conflicted. It does look as if though they have scrapped the numbering system, which is going to suck, especially for those of you who have collected the packages since 2018. Now it's prime time, baby, as we are about to discuss everything Transformers Age of the Primes, which, to go back to my earlier point, will be the next big mainline after Transformers Legacy United. So let's get stuck into it. So right now, it is rumoured that this is currently expected to span over the next 2 years and will likely conclude towards the end of 2026. It will finally give us the legendary 13, and with the exception of Vector Prime, all of the Primes are expected to be a complete brand new mould and will include their own unique artifacts. And as part of this year's Cybertron Con, we saw not only the very first wave completely revealed, but also a ton of teasers as to what we can expect heading into Wave 2. And let's just say that the Age of Primes is most definitely upon us. So to kickstart the wave off, there will be in total 4 deluxes, the first being Fugitive Waspinator, which really to nobody's surprise will be a slight retool / major repaint of the animated universe Bumblebee. And despite not being entirely brand new, this is still actually really awesome, as I do believe the original Transformers animated toy was sadly cancelled way back in the day, and the Bumblebee figure is by far one of my favourites, so at the very least this will make for a banging rival to stack up against him. The second deluxe would be Solus Prime, the hottest Prime. She is the maker and will include her forge, and honestly for a deluxe class I think she looks epic. The first time that I saw an image of her I immediately thought she was a Voyager, and it is kind of a shame that she's not, because when it comes down to scale I would imagine that she's about to be dwarfed by the rest of the 13. But seriously, for that deluxe class price point, she looks banging, and much like the other Primes, she will transform into a full-blown Cybertronian truck, which again appears to be super solid when it comes down to its design. The third deluxe class is also another absolute banger, and despite this line primarily focusing around the Primes, if you're a fan of the original G1 cartoon, then there is also something pretty big for you guys to geek out over, because this will be a deluxe class aerial bot Slingshot. So yes guys, that does confirm that Superion is coming, and I think the robot mode, with the exception of the lower legs, is actually really solid, and I do think it's got a lot to do with the fact that this guy will not transform into an actual limb. Instead, he will become an armament, much like we did see from Menasor as part of Transformers Legacy, which also results in a very clean jet mode, one that I would argue looks even better in comparison to the robot mode. And to pair alongside him, the fourth and final deluxe as part of Wave 1 would be Aerial Bot Air Raid, and I think it's really cool to have not one but 2 aerial bots in the very first wave alone. Right now this guy looks to be the better out of the 2, and again, seeing as he will attach onto a skeleton, there's nothing really to compromise the look of either the robot or the jet mode. So right now, despite not having these guys in hand, already they do appear to be a pretty big step up in comparison to their Combiner Wars counterpart, and I would love to know what you guys think again down below. Do you think Hasbro have cooked when it comes down to these aerial bots, or do you think that their predecessors were superior? Now we've got to talk about the Voyagers for Wave 1, because even these are banging. So the first will be an Armada Universe Red Alert. This actually looks fantastic. What a great update in comparison to the original vintage toy, super accurate to his character model, and alongside Optimus Prime may just be one of the best out of the entire Armada subline. He will include all of the interchangeable attachments, which again I thought was a really sweet touch, and despite being incredibly similar in design to the Legacy Crankcase mold, he is surprisingly completely brand new, which I think is great. The ambulance mode looks just as solid as the robot mode, and will even be able to recreate his full-blown weaponized look, where you can take the cannon, flip that bad boy to the front, and have it begin blasting the crap out of the Decepticons. And to accompany him, the second Voyager is by far the most important. This would be Primer Prime, the leader of the 13. Now this is a complete brand new mold, and again looks really good. It seems like he may just end up being the Tarn of Age of the Primes, because not only is he incredibly lean, but he even has fully articulated opening hands, which is always a massive plus. He will include the iconic Star Saber alongside the original Matrix of Leadership, which is able to be stored inside the inbuilt Matrix chamber. The only thing which right now I'm not super sold on would have to be that head sculpt. They've kind of Evo fusioned his design to include traits I believe from the original G1 show, and whilst it's definitely not a bad sculpt, I do think it could be much better. Now this guy, much like Solus Prime, will also transform into a very heavy infantry Cybertronian truck, which again looks solid. Then rounding off Wave 1 entirely, seeing as unfortunately Core Class is not going to return in 2025, we have to discuss the two brand new Leader Class figures. The first being the G2 Universe Grimlock. So this will be a blue redeco of the amazing Studio Series 86 version, and it looks surprisingly really decent, although it is kind of a shame to see them include that really awful wheelie figure in comparison to any of the swords that they did include with the comic edition version. But the Dinobot mode again looks sick, and I really like the attention to detail of them leaving the neck in clear plastic so that you're able to see some of the internal details beneath to match the original toy, which is awesome. And then the second Leader Class and the final figure to round off Wave 1 entirely would be a Prime that really needs no introduction, that being Megatronus the Fallen. Now this guy was already previously announced as part of PulseCon this year, and I already went super in depth as to what I thought. Honestly, this is easily one of my most anticipated releases from the first wave, and these images just sold me even more. He looks fantastic, and I do wonder if we could potentially be looking at the pre-tool for the Studio Series 86 Megatron. You guys again, be sure to sound off below and let me know. Bolting our way through yet another reveal, for those of you who weren't impressed by Wave 1, then don't you guys worry, because we are only just warming up, this time with the 2025 Commander Class Aerial Bot Silverbolt, the leader of the Aerial Bots, and this guy looks pretty fantastic. So this will be a very similar setup to what we did see from Motormaster in Legacy. The core robot will be incredibly detailed and super engineered, and really does look to be a pretty big improvement in comparison to the Combiner Wars version. It will transform into a pretty decent jet, although yes guys, there will be some undercarriage kibble, but that's really just a given considering how sleek the jet was in the original G1 cartoon. But guess what, you can make it look even clunkier if you whack on what they are officially calling as an additional booster, as to justify that Commander Class price point. In addition to transforming into the entire upper torso of Superion, he will also include the skeleton for the other aerial bots to clip onto, which is something that I actually thought works quite well with Menasor. It resulted in a very solid combine mode. This can also be used as a full-blown battle station, although to be honest, doesn't really look all that great. Personally, I would have much preferred had they maybe been able to recreate the runway that we did see from the original G1 toy. And in terms of Superion, right now he is looking insanely good. Already a huge improvement in comparison to that Combiner Wars version. Now the aerial bots themselves won't necessarily form the actual limbs. Instead, these will connect onto the side of the arms and the back of the legs. Again, very similar to what we did see from Menasor, but I actually think it works really well. If you were to compare this to the actual animation model, it's incredibly close, and I know there will be some that would prefer, especially in the case of the legs, for the aerial bots to be facing the front, but seriously, if you do go back and check out the original G1 cartoon, this is actually pretty bang on. Now we turn to what may just be the star of the show, because if you guys weren't impressed with Wave 1 and you then weren't impressed with the Commander Class, now let's discuss the Titan Class, which will be Star Optimus Prime, aka Star Convoy. I actually cannot believe this is happening. This is so insanely awesome. The last time that we saw this character, he was a pretty basic retool of the Power of the Prime's Leader Class Optimus Prime, and to go from that to this is just epic. The robot mode looks stunning. He will be packing articulated hands, and is overall a fantastic update again to the original. In addition to including the Zodiac Orb and a ton of additional blast effects, he will also come with a Micromaster Hot Rod, which can actually fit inside this guy's chest. He will then be compatible with the tiny MT-13 micro trailer, which yet again is such an insanely deep cut. Star Convoy will also be able to transform into not only his truck mode, but then into a full-blown battle station, which is really where I think you guys are going to get the most out of those smaller Micromasters. Now some of you may be wondering that Star Convoy is a lot smaller in comparison to previous Titans, and you guys would be absolutely correct. This is why originally I was a little skeptical that he would be the Titan heading into 2025, but that smaller scale is actually reflected in the price point, as instead of retailing for the more traditional $220, this guy will now retail for $150 US. So there is a pretty big difference, and I think that's awesome. Although it does kind of make me think that going forwards, what exactly is the point of HasLab? Because if you were to now look at something such as Deathsaurus and compare it against this Star Optimus Prime, I really do think that could have been easily sold at retail for this new Titan price point. But again, I would love to know what you guys think down below. And that just about does it for some actual physical Transformers products. But if Wave 1, the Commander class and the Titan class weren't enough to whet your appetite, then don't you guys worry, because we also have some pretty big teasers as to what we can expect from Wave 2 of Age of the Primes. The first being a deluxe class, Decepticon Crasher, which judging by the product image I imagine would be a direct reissue of what we did see from the Velocitron subline, so for those of you who did miss out on her first time round, this will be a great second opportunity. The next deluxe will be Decepticon Vortex, which I guess now pretty much confirms Bruticus, although I am left wondering, will he too attach onto a skeleton, or will this combiner go back to basics? I'm thinking that maybe this combiner won't require a Commander class in order to truly bring this guy together. There was then also a tease for a Voyager class Robots in Disguise Universe Skybite, who again looks incredibly promising so far, as well as a tease for a Voyager class Rescue Bots Universe Heatwave. Now this guy actually looks really good, although I'm kind of thinking if this package art is anything to go by, are we potentially looking at a Transformers Prime Universe bulkhead retool, especially as we begin to check out the entire upper arms? I guess only time will tell. And then to round off this video completely with an absolute banger, we got our first official look of the upcoming Leader Class Onyx Prime, which is easily one of the most challenging designs to translate into a transforming figure, and it really does look as if though they're about to go all out. This guy looks to be incredibly Centaur inspired and will have 4 proper legs, which I think is bonkers. And that right there, guys, is a wrap. What an absolute beast China Cybertron Con turned out to be. Transformers Age of the Primes looks to be absolutely banging, and I would love to get your guys' thoughts down below. Out of all of the reveals and teasers discussed in today's video, what are you guys most excited for? Now this is likely to be the final discussion video of 2024, so be sure to sound off below and let me know your thoughts on everything mentioned in today's video. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, transform and roll out!